This is a pre-built version of the application. So if we go ahead and run it, and since this is the only peer, let's go ahead and skip and list all connections to or from this peer. So this peer is not receiving messages from any other peer, and no other peers are receiving messages from this peer. And let's go ahead and start another peer, and I don't want to start it in this IDE since it will be in this area, and we would be only able to see one tab at a time, so one peer at a time. So let's go ahead and open up another IDE going against the same code base. And run this one. And let's also skip for now and list all connections to and from this peer. So this peer is not receiving messages from any other peer, and no other peers are receiving messages from this peer. And let's do add listen to peers, and this peer will be picking up messages from this one with this port, and this is my machine name. And now let's do list connections here and here. So here this peer is not receiving messages from any other peer, and this peer is sending messages to this peer. And here this peer is receiving messages from this peer, and this is the port here. So let's go ahead and have this peer picking up messages from this one. So add listen to peers, and we'll be picking up messages from my machine name and this port. So this port. And let's list all connections here and here. So we have actually, let me do this. Have this one like this, and this one. So peer sending messages to this peer, is this one, and this peer is receiving messages on this port, and this peer is sending messages to this one, and the peer receiving messages from this peer is on this port. And this peer is receiving messages from the other one on this port, and this peer is or peers receiving messages from this peer on this port. And we'll have two more peers that are running from the command prompt. And our code is in this directory. So this is where our code is. So let's go ahead and cd to that directory. And let's set the path to where we have our Python in both places. So this is where we have our Python. And let's go ahead and run both and this one will be on this port, and this one will be on this port, and we'll have them picking up messages from each other. So this one will pick up from this one, and this one will pick up messages from this one, so they can communicate with each other. And those two, they can do the same thing. And now let's have everybody picking up messages from everybody else. So it does check so that it doesn't send messages to itself, and it does check that it only sends messages to peers that are picking up messages from it one time. So if we repeat it here, like we already are sending messages to this other peer, but it does check here and doesn't repeat sending the same message. So this is for convenience. So now we can send and receive messages from each one of the peers. And let's list the connections. So this one has those connections. So peers sending messages to this peer are those other 3 peers, and this peer is receiving messages from those on those ports, and this peer is sending messages, so on this port is sending messages to those 3 other peers on those ports. And let's do same here, list all connections, and here and let's go ahead and remove one of the peers. And list the connections. Now we have 2 on each one. And if we remove this one and go ahead and list the connections, and they can send messages to each other. And close this one and list the connections. So this peer is not receiving messages from any other peer, and no other peers are receiving messages from this peer. So in short, each peer acts as both client and server to other peers. And the source code will be available for download. Also a longer version that includes coding and test running the application will be available for watching by channel members at the senior developer level and above.